This is a special presentation for Nightride FM.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome everyone here. What I would like to do right now is to introduce to you a very special guest, and his name is Bill Ledgerwood, but he goes by the name of Midnight Smoke. How you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great.
Excellent. And you have a new album that I think just dropped recently, right?
Yes, last week, the 5th of May, I believe, was the actual date.
And it is absolutely incredible.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I was listening to it, and I get a lot of people giving music to me and everything like that. I try to give everything a listen as much as I can, but the second that I press play on this, I swear to God, I was in an entirely different universe. Now, I listen to a lot of Synthwave, and to go into this like universe that you created, I was just kind of blown away that you're kind of really thinking out of the box.
Thank you. I'm incredibly beyond flattered. Making this, I originally thought, this is extremely brooding and downtrodden. Who the heck's going to want to rock this in a car while they're driving along or something? But, it's gotten a lot of positive response, so I'm beyond flattered. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, absolutely. Now, the thing is, do you even consider yourself Synthwave? That's, you can answer that any way you want, and I won't feel, any differently any which way.
So I went into this thinking that's what it would be, because when I got started on hardware and synthesizers and things like that, I would have 3 or 4 sequences going, making synthwave type tracks, nice, pulsing beats, fast stuff, And so if I was just playing around and jamming, with my stuff, that's what came out. But then when I was like, okay, I'm gonna make an album, I guess I went about it a different way, not on purpose, but I didn't, just press record on all the loops that I was making. I actually, okay, well, let me get this bass line. Well, let me switch this up. Let me change this. Well, let me make this lead over this part, but let me take this out. So it kind of just all chopped up into something that doesn't even really sound like synthwave at all. So I still wanted it to be obviously synthesizer heavy, but in my mind, I was still going for like the album I Was a Dream on Fire track. I was going for that kind of Michael Mann neo-noir soundtrack kind of vibe, a real mellow, dark vibe to it. So it kind of ended up that way.
Absolutely. And in fact, I almost want to just call it Noirwave.
That's what somebody had said, and I was like, man, that is perfect. Because anytime I was, telling somebody, hey, I got a synthwave, well, not really synthwave. It's kind of, it's wave.
You're like, what is it?
Oh yeah, somebody said that. I was like, that's a real good way to describe it. So yeah, I like that.
It really is, but in the same sense as synthwave really paints that aesthetic of the 80s, you're also painting an aesthetic, but for a completely different motif. Whereas you're going for a dark, dreamy, noir type of thing, almost reminiscent of like the movies of the 50s and the 60s. And
yeah, absolutely.
Mixed with the 80s. And I hear a little bit of Pink Floyd, actually.
Definitely. I can't get Pink Floyd out of my stuff. I mean, David Gilmour was one of my first influences as a guitar player, and even still to this day, he's probably my favorite guitar player. So.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of David Gilmour as well. And the moment that I heard the music, I was like, this takes me back to the 80s. But the funny thing is, I lived in the 80s, so I kind of know, really, it wasn't all about the palm trees and the fast cars.
Yeah.
It had this subculture of all this great moody music, even like bands like Yes and
yeah, absolutely,
Pink Floyd, and just all these different bands that would create this wonderful, moody, melodic pieces that just allow your mind to just drift away And to me, that pulls me right back into the 80s. That pulls me into a universe. So I'm going to say 100% to me, this is absolutely synthwave, but it's got a twist to it, which is amazing that, you
Thank
can
you. That's
put a twist to synthwave because it's really hard to do.
well, yeah, and that too, So anytime I'm playing and just live looping and jamming out or something, I'll think about like, yeah, it sounds, it sounds cool, but then again, it sounds like everything else. So I don't, what's the point in me recording it and putting it out there? So anytime I do record something, I always try to make it different. And I guess, I don't know if I go too far or too, push the boundary too much, but I always try to, kind of go up and down and different, explore different areas of even, in this case, the 80s, the old movies, 50s movies, film noir, Michael Mann. I really like all that just real quiet digital synth sounding with a lead guitar quietly over it, and this little 80s beat going behind it, sounds like coming out of an elevator from the 80s or something. That whole vibe just really speaks to me. So I was like, man, I'm gonna push that on this one. And it
Yeah.
came out in a couple of them, I think. But.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you did a wonderful job on the album. In fact, let's go ahead and dive into some of the tracks here. Now, we're not going to play
Okay.
the whole album, but I think we're going to play my favorite tunes. So we're going to go ahead and drop some of the tracks, and hopefully you could talk about them a little bit and kind of
Absolutely.
let us know your headspace when you're
Absolutely.
writing them. And we're going to go into the very first track, and this is entitled Sky Drifter. And here it is.
I wish I could talk in Technicolor, or let you. Did you say you could see it?
No, I can't quite see it.
It's here. Can't you feel it? This whole room. Everything is in color, and I can feel the air. I can see it. I can see all of it. I'm part of it. Can't you see it?
I'm trying.
And once again, that was Sky Drifter by Midnight Smoke. Now, man, that is just such a trippy track. And I guess I say trippy because I actually went and dug the sample from what you've taken for that track. And it's, what was it, like an old 1950s LSD psychological thing?
Yeah, they had this, I guess they were experimenting with LSD. I guess they had this lady that was willing to try it out. And they fed her LSD and came back in a couple hours and started talking to her. And I just thought it was one of the most interesting things, the way she was talking. I don't know, it was just very interesting. I thought, man, I could chop this up and use this. So that was one of the few tracks that doesn't have an actual film piece. It's just some documented piece of history.
But it almost feels like a film, the way that you chop it up. And there's something amazing that I have always found about the way that you can insert a dialogue or a narrative into the composition and just give it its own texture. And it doesn't even have to fit contextually. Like it could be talking about an LSD trip or something like that. But just when you insert it into the right sounding track, it really just creates this wonderful layer. And I had to do a little bit of digging. Obviously, it just flows in. It feels like a movie when you're listening to it, and that's
it works. Yeah, it's. I mean, I'd really like that one. I was debating on whether I should use it or not, and I was like, well, I'll throw it in there. Why not? So.
No, it was great. Now, one of the things I did notice too about all your music, which I guess this kind of lends itself into the moodiness and just the vibe that you're going for, because you're kind of going for kind of a chill, and it's very dreamy, and it's very long, obviously for a reason, I guess, because you're pushing like 9 minutes on some of these tracks too.
Yeah, and that's not something. It's not really intentional. And then when I finish something, I think, wow, I kind of went too long with this. But then I'm like, I don't really want to try to spend a bunch of time chopping it up. Screw it, I'll just put it out. So it's just kind of how it. I don't really do it on purpose, but it just ends up being about between 7 to 9 minutes, and sometimes like, well, maybe I'll do a couple minute long fade out or something.
You don't want to chop down the nuance of what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'd really have to sit there and think, okay, well, what part can I lose and what part can I do? And I was like, I don't feel like trying to. I feel like I'm going to mess it up more by doing that. So.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, you kind of probably would, because again, these dreamy type of songs that just allow your mind to drift, and I would like listen to this if I was maybe like just chilling. I would put this on in a hot tub or something and just relax and just let the music seep into the air, and
absolutely, and it's more written for like accompanying life, whatever you're doing, not necessarily like turn everything off, quiet, listen to it, but more like, pop this on while you're smoking a cigarette outside or whatever it is you're doing, It's not real up front, real in your face, 4 minutes of this catchy melody that, boom, you got to shut everything else off and listen to, It's definitely a good background piece.
Right, absolutely. So let's go ahead and drop another track here, and I want to talk a little bit about the elements that you insert into the music that is not dialogue, but we'll get into that in just a minute. And right now we're going to go ahead and drop one of these 9-minute long tracks and let you guys give it a listen. This is it's a little tune called Empty Spaces, and here it is.
My heart's still ticking. I know what I'm doing. The only place I get hurt is out there. The world don't give a shit about me.
I'm here. I'm really here.
'cause I don't know how to love you. Here I got a ways to go. The day is done, like so many times before. I have only one regret, is that I didn't try to find you. The morning that you left. I don't
All right, and that was Empty Spaces once again by Midnight Smoke. Just such an amazing, dreamy piece. Now, another one of the things that I noticed is some of the unconventional instruments that you use in all of your music. One of the great things I liked about that song was towards the end, you seem to kind of just like you were saying before, you just kind of let it loop and loop and loop out, and it almost has kind of a tribal element to it. Is that kind of like what you were thinking when you wrote it, or like you were saying you just wanted to kind of just leave it go until it just felt right to kind of do that fade out?
Yeah, so this one actually was the first one I had written when I got, I had just acquired a TR-8S drum machine, and
Oh,
this was the
nice.
first. Yeah, this was the first one I had written for this whole album, pretty much, or not written, but first one I went ahead and got down. When I first got it, I was still like, okay, I don't want to do just a four to the floor, bass snare, hi hat. I want to do something different, so I was exploring around with it. Got a lot of different sounds out of it, a little different, weirder rhythms, pop some delay on it, things like that. Put an LFO on the snare or something on it. But and so that's kind of how it was. It made this weird, kind of tribally sounding beat. And when I was putting everything else on top of it, I just kind of let it go for 9 minutes or so. And I was like, man, kept here and there. I'd play something else on top of this, and I think it even went longer. I just had to take it down to 9 minutes. But yeah, it was just kind of one of the ones where I liked the rhythm I had, so I just kind of let it go and saw what else I could put on top of that.
Yeah, it's got a great flow to it. And the funny thing is, the tracks, when you listen to the tracks, they don't seem like they're that long when you're listening to it, because you are in a specific mind state, I think, that it really just kind of flows.
And especially with that one, Empty Spaces, it's definitely got that feeling, being as the first one I spent a lot of time on the drums with that, and a lot of time debating, is this what I want to do? Because this doesn't sound anything like, I don't know, it's kind of weird, but yeah, and I just kind of went with it. I said, here it is.
That was your point of no return, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Now from there on, I was like, well, you might as well just make whatever comes out and make it sound like whatever it is.
But that's good, though. You buck the trend, and I think that's really good for an artist to do things like this and buck the trend, and it kind of gives the freedom to the next artist that says, oh, I'm really nervous about putting trumpet into my music or whatever. It's like, just go for it. If it feels right to you, then go for it.
Yes, I can't remember what it was. There was something I heard, like a somber trumpet. I usually don't think of trumpets as being somber, but I heard like a somber trumpet on some track, and I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. I was like, I got to put a trumpet on one of mine. I got to try that out. And this was the one, I do that at the end of this. I had this little, it's drowned in effects, so it might not even sound like a trumpet, but at the end of this, I had a little trumpet piece on there.
Oh, that's amazing.
Where I usually did like the lead synth part. But yeah, man, I love adding just those elements in there.
For sure. Another one of the elements too that I think is really cool, and actually I don't think it gets used a lot, is some of the white noise that you incorporate into the composition. I find it really interesting because it adds a whole other element, a whole other mood factor to the songs.
I love noise, honestly. I mean, there's a lot of times where I'll just play with noise. I think the whole track Night Terrors is just a bunch of noise. I have a couple of my synths layered. I made several different noise patches that would evolve over time, and I love it. I mean, I can do white noise and pink noise, and give me some LFOs and delay, and you can make all kinds of cool stuff. A couple of envelopes, make it rhythmic. But yeah, I love that stuff too.
Yeah, and it's just an amazing thing. Now, the thing that really, again, brought me to your music, and the stuff that when I listen to it, it takes me back to the days of Pink Floyd, and also to the days of David Lynch movies, because I'm a huge David Lynch movie, and I know just by reading some of the tracks, I know that you have to be one as well. In fact, your last track, it's entitled Goodnight Margaret, and the minute that I heard the samples in that track, it just clicked. I knew exactly what it was, and I was like, oh my God, not only did you put Twin Peaks in, but you put Twin Peaks The Return, which is, I guess, season 3.
Yep, and the most real scene out of the entire series, I think, or one of the most real scenes. I mean, it was just such a touching scene when I watched that live, like I had read about it before that even aired, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Right. And for the listeners that don't really follow up on Twin Peaks, she actually passed away, I believe, before the series aired or shortly after the series began to air.
As
I
far
forget.
as what I know, it was so she had called David Lynch because he had. I can't believe he did it, but he had said, in the original Twin Peaks, I'll see you in, what was it, 25 years or something like that. And they
Right.
aired this 25 years later,
Yep.
I think, to the date. But anyways, yeah, Margaret, I think she had, she had cancer, and she had called David Lynch and said, "Hey, I don't think I have much more time. If you want to shoot with me, you're gonna have to do it now," before they'd even started shooting. And so they did these scenes with her, which are moving as hell to me. From what I understand, I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 days later, or sometime before it even aired, she passed away. So she was able to get those in right before that. The scenes are her talking about her dying in the show as well. I mean, I can't even imagine trying to act that out.
Right. I mean, I don't even think there was probably acting at that point. It was just
Exactly. I mean,
real emotion.
yeah. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, man! I gotta do something for that." So I didn't know what to use. I also didn't want to cut it. I didn't want to cut that a bunch. I wanted that to be, Margaret talking on the phone to Hawk. So
Right.
I let the whole thing play. That's another reason why that one's a real long one, because I didn't want to cut out Margaret. I wanted that whole that scene to play. So
I guess that would be kind of the crux of what you do with your music. When something feels right, you can't chop it down, you can't cut it down to size, you have to let it play out. And songs like that, you just kind of have their moment and let it bleed out.
definitely, and especially with that one because of the whole issue, man. I was just, gosh, that was a beautiful piece of television right there.
Yeah, yeah. And David Lynch is very organic, and you're very organic as well with your music. And that Margaret scene is it's beautiful. And I tell you what,
Oh yeah.
let's just go ahead and drop it, because this is honestly one of my favorite songs. So here it is. This is Good Night, Margaret, and enjoy.
I'm dying.
I'm sorry, Margaret.
You know about death. That it's just a change, not an end. Hawk. It's time. There's some fear in letting go. Remember what I told you? I can't say more over the phone, but you know what I mean. From our talks, when we were able to speak face to face. Watch for that one. The one I told you about. The one under the moon on Blue Pine Mountain. Hawk. My lawn is turning gold. The wind is moaning. I'm dying. Good night, Hawk.
Nightride. Good night.
All right, once again, that was Goodnight Margaret. Now, I want to just kind of take a pause for a second here because I want to go back a little bit before you wrote the album because you only have this one album, I guess, in this particular genre, but I have a feeling that you've been doing music for a while. How long have you been doing music? I mean, please don't say you just picked up a keyboard because I'm just going to just hate myself forever because I could never do that.
No, definitely not. So I started as a guitarist, and I've been playing guitar for maybe, oh gosh, 25 years now, maybe something like that. Too long. So I started as a guitarist, and I was into the blues and classic rock, and that was kind of what I went with for several years. That's what I grew up on. Of course, Floyd, Zeppelin, the Jimmys, Hendrix and Page, loved all them. Buddy Guy. That's where I learned how to play guitar, and that was the first thing I learned. And my mother was a pianist at the church that they went to. So she had a piano in the house and she was constantly trying to teach us. We didn't want to learn then. And as I got older, I started wanting to play and I just kind of dilly-dallied with it. All my life, really, I've had, guitar and piano. And then when I got, high school, I had bands all throughout high school. And then college era, I had, a couple bands through there. One that ended up touring around Europe and Mexico and America, extreme metal band, actually.
Oh, wow.
And then I was into, the real heavy metal for a while, death metal, extreme metal, a couple bands with that. And then I'm in a, I guess, psych rock or stoner rock band now. I mean, I've been a guitarist in bands as long as I can remember, playing keys and guitars and all that good stuff for a long time.
So it's almost a release to just be able to go from your death metal to somber, dreamy Wonderland kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And I didn't really mess with synthesizers until, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. People that have had other bands have had them, and I'm like, oh, this is cool, play on it or whatever. But I had no idea what the heck I was doing. But maybe 4 years ago, in the band I was in at the time, I got a Sub Fatty, a Moog Sub Fatty, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing with it. But as soon as I plugged it up and started playing, I was like, oh my gosh, what on earth is this? And then, of course, that blew up. I found out, Synthwave, Retrowave, all this, synthesizer music. And of course, all the music I already loved, classic rock to use synthesizers and things like that in the 80s that I already knew. I was a huge fan of ballads from the 80s.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Heavy rock or hard rock from the 80s, metal from the 80s. I loved all of that stuff too. So really, this is kind of just my entire life of music trying to fit into something that I would create without a band around me, So that's kind of where this came from. I thought it would be synthwave style stuff, originally playing it, but once I buckled down and started recording, it turned quite a bit different.
Indeed, it did. But again, I love it. I love the album.
Thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and close it out, but we're going to play one more track. But yeah, you can definitely go to, I guess, Bandcamp, right, to purchase this album if they like it, obviously.
Yeah, you can download it for free if you want to. No cost, but yeah, I've got a Bandcamp. It's Facebook as well.
Now, do you have another album that you're working on currently?
Yeah, I do. I have about 4 tracks right now. 2 that didn't make it on that one, and then 2 newer ones that that are babies right now, and they're quite a bit more synthwave style, with the element that this current album has. So I think it'll be a good mix for the next batch of stuff that's coming up.
Amazing. Well, I'm very excited to see what you have coming on down the road. But in the meantime, we do have this wonderful album here. And once again, the album is entitled I Was a Dream on Fire. And I tell you what, we're going to go ahead and close out the show here. Let's go ahead and play the title track. So once again, thank you very much, Bill. I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate this so much more. You have no idea. This has been great. Thank you.
No problem. My pleasure. And we're going to go ahead and play you out with this last track here. Go buy the album. It is amazing. Once again, this is I Was a Dream on Fire. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
So you never wanted a regular type life. barbecues and ball games. Yeah. Just regular type life, New York. My life, no, my life. No, my life's a disaster. Guy told me one time, don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. Now, if you're around me and you gotta move when I move, how do you expect to keep a marriage? Well, that's an interesting point. I have a woman. What do you tell her? I tell her I'm a salesman. You know, I have this recurring dream. I'm sitting at this big banquet table, and all the victims of all the murders I ever worked are sitting at this table, and they're staring at me with these black-eyed